Hi, welcome to identityweek.net. Today we're kicking off our Transformative Women series by talking to Alison McDowell, who's co-founder and director of Brooklyn Identity, but she's had a career really spanning many roles in financial services. You've been a HR leader, you've worked in government, really creating the collaboration between private and public sector for digital identity. It's really great to have you on the platform today to kind of talk about issues really affecting women, trying to increase collaboration, inclusivity across every sector. Um, First of all, what's your kind of take on and your experience of inclusion in the workplace in general? Maybe that being in a obviously a technological background that you have, but how has that impacted the technologies, the products that you've been involved in creating? There is a relationship between that. What's your experience?
First of all, Evie, thanks for having me here today. Um, I think those are two separate questions. I think my experience of inclusion in the workplace is has been different. Like you said, I've worked in pharmaceuticals, I've worked in financial services, I've worked in Big Four consulting, and I've worked in government. So I've seen it from a lot of different angles. Um, I think inclusion is really important, but I think we have to start with diversity, right? It's really easy to create an inclusive environment if everyone's exactly the same and has the same interests and does the same thing and sort of is from the same place. That's quite easy to create inclusion. I think when you take a lot of people with different perspectives and ideas, it can be women, it could be people from another country, it could simply be people who grew up in a different way or a different place from you, and the list goes on. I think it's when you take that mix of a lot of different ideas and then try to create inclusion. That's a lot harder, but by doing so, I think it generates better products, right? Because you're starting from a position of having a broader experience base and a broader set of customer needs and a broader set of solutions that people have seen to different problems in their lives and in their work. And so I think the two go hand in hand. And one of the challenges for technology, particularly, is getting a lot of different people interested in being part of technology. And the two sides of a coin, if they don't feel like they're going to be included and they're not going to be engaged, they're not really that interested in joining. What I've found in the digital identity world, which is a pretty niche world in the big scheme of things, is that people are passionate about this work, right? The engagement levels for people who feel included are really high, and people want to do the right thing. So the question is, how do you get more people with different perspectives to want to do that thing and to feel like they have a voice and a place in that environment? And that, I think, is the real challenge.
And you're right to mention digital identity. I think the whole concept of it being built for everyone by everyone is really powerful. Um, what's the state of digital identity at the moment? You work in this field. Do we have enough representation of women and a broad workforce working on the digital identity scheme across Europe?
Um, in my perspective, absolutely not. And you see it when you go to conferences. I think you always see women wearing bright colors so they can stand out at these events, but they stand out anyway because there are so few women in the industry, and that's the same for people of color. It's the same for young people, if I can be completely serious, right? The people who have to prove their identity or attributes about themselves most often are going to be people who have to prove that they're a certain age to do a thing, right? That's a really important thing you have to prove. Prove that you're over 18 or over 21 to do all of these things that you get to do when you're an adult. But if you look around in this industry, it's a middle-aged industry. And I have nothing against middle-aged people. I am a middle-aged person myself. But these are people who have grown up with technology. They're digital natives. And I don't think we have enough of them, men or women, in our environment. So I think there's a lot of places where we could attract a more diverse group of people. And then, like I said, we have to figure out how they feel like they have an equal voice to all the people who have been here for a long time.
That's a good point because they're probably the age group most you know, receptive to technologies, and we are trying to broaden out digital identity to all age groups. But they would be great to have on board, working in the industry. Um, on just the basis of organizations, they have to implement certain initiatives around inclusion and identity. Are we seeing enough of those strategies working, or are they tokenistic? Do they have value underpinning them?
I think and I'd say this because I worked in HR once upon a time and I was a consultant once upon a time and I'm in government now, so I have to believe that policy does something. I think there are some really important policy answers, right? We need affordable access to childcare, particularly in the UK. We need a right to flexibility. We need parental leave to be split evenly between men and women, right? So that people don't look at a woman of childbearing age when they're in the hiring process and think, oh no, this person's going to go off. I can't possibly take that hit to my business. But then there's a huge cultural step forward. And I can speak primarily from the UK. People have to use those policies, right? You can't be penalized as a man for taking paternity leave over an extended period, or you won't be able to do it. You can't be penalized as a woman for asking for flexibility by being given a role that's not as strategic, not as high profile, not as career enhancing. And so I think it's a double-edged sword, and one won't work without the other. Just implementing new policies without really focusing on creating a culture that allows people to use them and thrive won't make the difference it needs to.
What is the potential for senior career progression for women in identity? In those roles, decision-making roles. You mentioned you've done consulting. I see a lot of senior people in the industry maybe going into agencies, consulting roles. Is there room to get there into those positions?
Yeah, when I first came out of graduate school, my first mentor told me that the most important thing you have in your career is meaningful work and senior level exposure. And that advice has stuck with me for my entire career, right? Those are two key things that allow you to progress your career. I think that the senior level exposure, it can come from anyone who, has a power to make your career better, more enriched, move at the rate that you want it to move. But being able to look up and see a woman who looks like you, right? And that's not just physical appearance. It's a woman who's chosen to plan her family in the way that you've chosen to plan your family, whether you have kids early or kids late, or you go part-time. It's looking for senior women who have been successful making decisions that you might want to make as a more junior woman. I think that is invaluable. And I know there have been points in my career where I've looked up and I've seen women, but their lives didn't look like mine, right? They weren't in a dual career couple, or they didn't have kids, or they came from a background that was very different from mine. And so it was hard to find the similarities beyond just our gender. And I think that there needs to be more. So when people are looking up, the more role models they have and mentors, hopefully, who can tell a story that resonates with them and their experience, the more meaningful that sponsorship will be.
We talk about it's representation, isn't it, really? Seeing, you know, someone in the shoes that you hope to fill in maybe 5 or 10 years' time. Um, so more on that then. Do we foster a culture of mentorship um, in the industry, in technical fields, where we can really inspire and show a meaning, path to younger women, so that they can um, be in charge of policies, technology, whatever it is.
I think that's on a person by person basis. Um, I think I think it's really important for more junior women to be able to look up and find a mentor who can share their experiences. Ideally, someone who they feel like they have something in common with. I think that's really important. But equally, I think it's important for men to reach out and sponsor women, through their careers. It's interesting. I worked in diversity and inclusion very, very early in my career, and we commissioned some research that said that the thing that was holding women back wasn't that they couldn't see women at the top. It was that men going into a meeting, the meeting before the meeting, let me just whisper in your ear, these are the people around the table. These are the decisions that are going to be made. This is the politics. The men would find somebody who reminded them of them when they were that age, right? And they'd have that little sidebar chat on the way into the meeting. And it was that kind of dynamic that really helped those men in those careers. Well, there's no reason that senior men couldn't do that with junior women, right? To say, hey, Evie, let me pull you aside and tell you the dynamics of what's going on in this room so that you can understand how decision is made in this organization. As an industry, I don't know if we do it as an industry. It has to be done. Each person in a senior role has to decide that as an industry, we need to create diverse solutions made by a diverse group of people. And they have to choose to behave in that way. And some people do it, men and women, and some people probably don't, men and women. So I think we all need to be conscious that it's our responsibility to create an identity landscape that's built by all for all.
In a way, it boils down to kind of your own decisions, your attitudes towards the people that you're working with. Are you going to, foster that mentorship? Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. So in a way, to encourage the retention of women in the industry, whatever industry it is, we need to see men and women, and everyone really, showing some of these qualities and really helping each other.
I, I think so. I mean, it's interesting now that I've gotten older. There's always been an acknowledgement that women leave the industry when they hit childbearing years, right? Because it's hard to balance and childcare is expensive and they want to stay home with their children. Um, various things, right? So there's always been a point at which people leave sort of mid-career in most organizations. But I think what we're also starting to see is there's this like midlife departure where women either decide they want more purpose in their work or they feel like as they get older, they aren't taken as seriously. But I think you do see a midlife departure, which is a huge shame because there's tons of experience that we're losing in the industry because people don't feel included. So it's an intersectional thing, right? It's women and age. And I think that, when you add sort of race into that too, the research shows that makes it even more complex. But I think there are multiple jumping off points at which we need to think about retaining women in any career, including identity.
And certainly making it easy for them to, be their authentic self in the workplace. And yeah, I totally agree. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great to just speak about some of these issues. It's a conversation we'll be having for many, many years. And there's lots more to add there. But no, thank you very much, Alison, for your time.
Thank you, Evie. It was a pleasure to talk to you.